Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House here with the tempestuous Charles Coulombe.
Tempestuous.
Tempestuous.
Like stormy.
Stormy.
Rainy.
Which is what California is right now.
That's true, and I epitomize our state, I guess.
You do.
Boy, I'm sort of like even more a state icon than Governor Brown.
Yes.
and I have a full head of hair. He doesn't. See? That's why I'm more comfortable in the rain than he is.
He's not comfortable in the rain?
No, that bald pate of his.
So what's new?
What's new? Well, yesterday was the 1st of March, St. David of Wales Day, the patron of Wales. So it was great. It was like St. Patrick's Day, only for Welsh. The daffodils and leeks and eating lamb, and gosh, what a great day. I like the Welsh.
Good. Yeah, they're good people.
They are. Now that's the good news. There's some interesting news that's occurring right here in this very building.
Uh-oh.
No, it's true. As you may have noticed if you went to lunch at the commissary today, that Lent is really, really influencing the menu. But that's not the fun part. The fun part was when I was talking to Donna from accounting around the water cooler. And you'll never guess who was voted by the ladies in accounting as their favorite junior executive here at Tumblr House.
Who? Me?
You got voted in favor.
Wow, how did that happen?
I don't know. I wasn't privy. I'm not a member of the women's section of accounting.
Great. What do I get?
Not a lot. It's a typical in-house thing. I think they are going to give us some flowers at lunch tomorrow. So not tomorrow, Monday.
Oh, okay. I hope. Okay.
Well, they told me it was better to give the flowers early in the week, given that it's all fish, than later in the week, when your stomach may not be up to a presentation.
When it's all fish?
Yeah.
The flowers?
No, the flowers aren't all fish. In the commissary, the food is fish.
Oh, right.
But as you noticed rather annoyingly last week, it gets older as the week goes by.
Ah,
which is why they're giving you the flowers to Monday rather than doing it today at the week's end.
Oh, that's thoughtful.
Yeah, at least you'll be able to keep your lunch down. Anyway, so much for in-house gossip. But they're all pulling for you, by the way.
It sounds like I'm sick.
Well,
they're all pulling for me.
Well, yeah. Well, they know that doing these broadcasts, you're exposed to the world and all that. They want you to know that you got their entire support.
Great.
Yeah, see?
I feel like Ferris Bueller or something. Save Ferris. Okay.
They come to think of it, they kind of think of you as being sort of the Ferris Bueller of this company. Yeah.
Well, that's nice, I guess.
I guess. I don't know. I don't know what it means, but I only come in here a few times a week. I don't live here like you guys do, so I don't know. I think I wouldn't be able to stand eating in the commissary more than a couple times a week. Anyway, let's move on.
Okay.
I've had enough of this stuff.
Okay, our first question is from Todd.
Yes, Todd.
It seems that many U.S. bishops highly approve of any and all gun control measures. Does the church have an official teaching or doctrine regarding gun control? I'm an ardent proponent of the Second Amendment and would be curious to hear your personal thoughts on the matter as well.
Well, no. I mean, obviously there is no church teaching on the matter except thou shalt not kill. Specifically thou shalt not murder. But the bishops do tend to champion causes that are popular, I think, to kind of offset the bad influence they may feel coming from the unpopular causes they're supposed to champion, like opposition to infanticide and sodomitical marriage and things like that.
Oh.
I can understand, we all like to be liked.
Yeah.
And if you're not, really big into the whole salvation of souls thing, which is Pope Benedict has told us isn't really on the table anymore for most bishops, yeah, we saw they want to get along. Doesn't work, though. Nobody likes them. I mean, not on that side. I'm sure we all love them, but none of the people that try to cotton up to like them, and they don't seem to catch that. But why should they? As for my own thoughts, well, you know, frankly, I believe that the whole firearm issue is very much a culturally conditioned thing. Very much a part of a country or a society's culture and history. This country, our society, was formed by two major elements in this area. One was the experience of the frontier, where, you know, from the very beginning of the settlement down to the late 19th century, if you were out in the frontier, you wanted to have a gun in easy reach. The second, of course, was the experience of the Revolution, and the enshrinement of the belief that ultimately government is our enemy, not our friend, which is true in some places, it's not true in others. I think in our country, its history, it's pretty much shown the government is often not our friend. So, I mean, you know, the Second Amendment is a part of the Constitution. I certainly support it, and I certainly support the right of people to bear arms. I mean, look, I was born in a city where only a firearm has been legal since 1876. But I have never noticed that that's prevented people from getting mugged at gunpoint. So the people you need to worry about are not going to be concerned about whatever laws you pass at all. They just won't. They're not going to sit down and want to suddenly fill out a lot of background information as they're picking up their Saturday night special. That's not how that works. So,
what about this whole talk about the assault rifle ban? Do you need an assault rifle to protect yourself?
Oh, I'm going to tell you something terrible. I don't even own a gun.
That's fine.
No, I'm pointing this out because I don't have a dog in the fight in that sense.
Oh, right.
But as far as assault rifles go, on the one hand, yeah, it's a little hard to see why the individual would need them. But on the other hand, it's interesting that during times of civil unrest, they do seem to come in handy. I'm young enough to remember the riots of '92 here. Mm-hmm. And I remember how businesses with owners who had assault rifles somehow didn't get torched. It was like magic.
Wow.
No, it's true. They hold up, you know, famous story of Canonization Rice's father driving off the Klan with a shotgun.
Ah.
And, of course, let's not forget, just to say that it shouldn't all be in the hands of private citizens, when those '92 riots, the rioters approached the frontier of Beverly Hills, you know, where Beverly Hills touches on lesser places.
Uh-huh.
The Beverly Hills PD had been instructed to shoot to kill. The 2 or 3 people stupid enough to cross the line were shot and killed. For some reason, this dissuaded the others from invading the holy city.
Wow. Okay.
And then I don't need to tell you that suddenly the Hollywood Hills, which is filled with gun control advocates, turned into an armed camp. And they had gunmen literally checking you out as you drive up Laurel Canyon or Coldwater Canyon. You were stopped.
Wow.
And these were the people, you know, who, oh, it's just so awful. But funny, when I'm in danger, I get assault rifles. I don't know how that goes. I just don't get it. And, you know, similarly, there's this fellow whose name escapes me, but famous columnist in the Washington Post. He was always going on about how wonderful gun control is. But then a burglar assaulted his home, and it turned out he was armed to the teeth. He subdued the guy pretty quickly and called the cops.
Maybe they're just for everyone else not having guns except them.
Well, yeah, I mean, I remember Mayor, what's his name? Mayor of New York, about 20 years ago, gosh, I can see his face, little wizened up little old guy. I can't think of his name right now, but he, back to where the city was extremely unsafe, he would take the subway to work every morning. He lived in his apartment, he wouldn't live in Gracie Mansion. He was very, you know, big about, it's not about my office, it's about me. Anyway, so tons of people were being assaulted on the subway in those days. And so he was asked if he wasn't afraid. He said, "Oh, no, not at all. My bodyguards have guns." And somehow he didn't catch the irony in that statement.
Yeah.
Whereas the rest of the citizenry, again, firearms having been illegal for private citizens since 1876 in New York, took him to start it. Those are my private thoughts on the matter, now shared with you.
I'm going to bring up two biblical quotes that I don't know whether or not they talk about this matter. Obviously, there's those who live by the sword die by the sword.
Well, if you live violently, you'll die violently. That's what gangbanging is all about.
And then, but before that, Jesus said, if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. And the disciple said, "See, Lord, here are 2 swords. That's enough," he replied.
Well, the one, of course, I suppose, is talking about self-defense. The 2 swords have traditionally been taken to mean the powers of church and state. And there are all sorts of long explanations about why that should be.
Interesting.
So, now you know.
Okay. Next question is from Brian Koch.
Hello, Rob.
What are Charles' thoughts on the imminent canonization of Pope Paul VI? I've heard a lot of negative comments from some of the traditional press about the entire situation and would like some insight on any potential scandals from his papacy.
Well, on one level, his papacy was a scandal. I mean, I lived through it. That was, the first part of it was given to wrecking everything we had. And it seemed like there was nothing too small for him to play with. And then he began to complain that the smoke of Satan had entered into the church. And then he gave us Humanae Vitae, which was probably the most prophetic document, other than Benedict XIV warning of what would happen if we stopped observing Lent. The most prophetic document I think I've ever read for a pope. And then, of course, after he wrote Humanae Vitae, his papacy was basically over. Because for the remaining 7 years, everybody crucified him, ignored him, made fun of him. So it's a weird mix. But, I mean, if he's canonized, he's a saint in heaven. They've got his miracles, apparently. And then my suspicion, remember that a pope who's canonized is never canonized for his policies. Otherwise, St. Celestine V, the one who resigned and gave Benedict his inspiration, would never have been canonized. She was canonized for personal holiness. With Paul, presuming he's a saint, I suppose, it's because of what he went through for the defense of Humanae Vitae.
When he says the smoke of Satan has entered the church, what do you think he was talking about?
By what has happened ever since, which a good chunk of which was his doing.
What has happened? I mean, what is he referring? I mean, there's so much. That's what I mean.
There's so much. He was referring on the plethora, everything from scandals to heretical teachings to liturgical garbage, the whole thing. And again, the irony of it at the time was, I wonder how that happened, Holy Father. Who opened that door? But
now in Puritan's Empire, if I remember correctly, you say he cried after Vatican II.
Oh yeah, and he was very much a Hamlet figure, and he perhaps called up forces he couldn't control, like the Sorcerer's Apprentice. But I hope he's in heaven. I mean, after all, it makes my chances better.
And so his canonization is imminent. It's coming.
Apparently, yes. Pope Francis, I'm sure, in his delicate way, would like to use this as a statement. Pope Francis being known for his delicacy of statements.
A statement on what?
Who knows? Ask him. God has given him the gift of unawareness, he says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, why should you be less confused than me, huh? Yeah, got you there, pal.
Well, as a fellow once said, confusion is the guardian of truth.
That's very, very true. And as Edward D. Wood Jr. said, life is a strange place in which to live. Absolutely. See, this is the kind of wisdom that makes the rounds in this building. In case you're wondering why all of our workers are so contented. sitting around pondering this stuff.
Okay, next question. Could you please talk about the nuances of the Jacobite movement? I read that they were the driving force for the Endarkenment era anti-clerical laws in France, their ideals and cult of liberty exported to America. Then I also recall you speaking positively of them, if I'm not mistaken. Were there warring factions of this movement which had opposing ideals? I'm certain you can shed light on this matter and perhaps point me in the direction of further reading.
Well, firstly, I'm wondering if he isn't conflating the Jacobins and the Jacobites. The Jacobins being the people who brought you the worst parts of the French Revolution, the Jacobites being the supporters of the Stuart line of the kings of France. That having been said, however, there were a few Jacobites involved in Freemasonry, and specifically the erection of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry.
Mm.
And then, if that weren't enough to confuse the thing further, you had a politician like Bolingbroke, who was a total unbeliever in God, who nevertheless was a Jacobite for a while. So there are many kinds of Jacobites, presuming he's not conflating him. But by and large, the leadership of the movement, and certainly its heirs, were very good people.
Okay. Jean Duplachane asks, why did the Roman Empire fall?
It was busy, had nothing better to do, it was bored.
No,
Well, there are a lot of, that's the question that historians have argued over for a long time. And it's a very complex one for several reasons. One, the decline of the birth rate, the emptying of the countryside, and the formation of great estates run by slaves, the decline of the numbers of natives in the military, and they're being replaced by what were basically mercenaries. These are all things that are reduced toward it. Edward Gibbons, in his Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, insisted that it was really the adoption of Christianity that destroyed the empire. I would argue that that actually gave the empire another century, a century and a half of life.
Mm.
But that's on the one side. On the other side, people who lived in 476 AD, which is the date we usually give to the fall of the Roman Empire, when already Britain and Gaul and a lot of other chunks were gone. That was the year in which the barbarian chieftain who was running Italy at the time, Odoacer, decided to depose the last Roman emperor in the West, Romulus Augustulus. But he did not abolish the empire. He sent the imperial diadem back to Constantinople and said, well, instead of two emperors, you only have one emperor again. And people who lived at the time that we consider the fall of the Roman Empire did not consider it to be such. The imperial idea certainly has survived. The imperial culture morphed over a long period of time into our own. The argument could be made in the sense that the Roman Empire never fell. We are it. It's a tough one.
Mm.
And certainly when the Emperor Theodosius the Great made baptism the entry into Roman citizenship.
Yeah.
Well,
that's the Holy Roman Empire.
no, the Holy Roman Empire was somewhat different. Holy Roman Empire, see again, 476 AD, the empire in the West comes to an end. The Emperor of the East in Constantinople becomes the sole emperor. But of course he doesn't rule most of the territories of the West which claim to be part of the empire. In the 500s, the Emperor Justinian decides he wants to make it real and, get it real.
Okay.
He wants to be real.
Yeah. Don't we all?
Yeah, well, he wants to keep it real. Dog.
Oh, he wants to keep it real. Okay.
He wants to keep it real, dog.
Yeah. Okay, wow, great.
And so he takes over North Africa and Italy and part of Spain. Doesn't reconquer Gaul or anything like that. And then slowly but surely, various forces, the Lombards from Germany, then the Muslims and so forth, restrict what we've come to call the Byzantine Empire. And they became less and less capable of defending the Pope. And so in 800, the Pope crowned Charlemagne, the Frankish king, as Holy Roman Emperor. And that's Christmas Day, 800 is usually the date we give for the beginning of the Holy Roman Empire. 1453, the last remnant of the Byzantine Empire is snuffed out by the Turks. The Russians claim eventually that their czars inherited the eastern claims. And then in 1806, after Napoleon makes himself Emperor of the French, the Holy Roman Emperor abdicates and becomes Emperor of Austria. Well, the argument is made that just because he abdicated, the Holy Roman Empire didn't cease to exist thereby, that it still exists as a sort of disembodied spirit, as in a sense the empire does as a whole. If you say that all of us who are baptized, at least baptized Catholic or Orthodox, are citizens thereof.
We're all just waiting.
We're waiting for the emperor. So, there's a sense then in which we're waiting for the empire to come back.
Okay. All right. Charlie has a question for you. He says, "Hi guys. I was wondering, as lots of my friends are getting into Dungeons and Dragons, I was wondering if it's okay to play such role-playing games, especially with the demonic characters and use of necromancy in the game."
Well, I think a lot depends upon the individual and how deeply rooted his faith is. If it's very deeply rooted, then there's, same with Harry Potter being a real chess devotee. But if your faith is not deeply rooted, well, then you've got a problem. I myself, to personal admission here in college, was a dungeon master. I was barred playing the game. Reason being that the 10 or so people who were playing were being pursued by a demon.
Yeah.
Asmodeus. They found a room at the castle which was roundabout with all sorts of foolproof anti-demonic symbols. They ran into the room without bothering to read the little sign that said maximum occupancy 4. So the floor collapsed and they all died.
My brother told me that story,
Yeah.
and he was infuriated.
Well, see, this is what I'm talking about. It's my fault they didn't read the sign.
Bad dungeon master.
See, and they wonder why I'm tempestuous.
Buzzkill.
Buzzkill?
We have to read signs? We want to cast spells and swing swords.
Yeah, that's nice.
Read signs.
You should have read the sign.
A demon's chasing us.
Yeah, well, but he didn't read the sign. And he couldn't, now, and see, the demon didn't get any of them. See?
Okay.
There you go. But no, seriously, kids, look, as with so many other things, be grounded in your faith. It's just a game. Don't be grounded in your faith, and anything can be a danger. Anything. And if you're not grounded in the faith, whose fault is that? Well, firstly, I suppose your parents, but secondly, you.
Okay, I'll play kind of devil's advocate, because I've just been reading...
We just did that with the devil's advocate. Okay, fine.
No, because, I'm just, I'm continuously reading Liturgical Year, and now I'm starting Introduction to the Devout Life, and coincidentally, I'm pretty sure both Guéranger and St. Francis de Sales say that, if it doesn't help your faith, then just get rid of it. If it could be a risk, get rid of it.
Well, that's very true. But that goes back to the individual. I mean, with me, it was silly fun. And well, so silly that I got barred from it, in fact. But, it all depends. It's like anything else. How many people are doing World of Warcraft constantly?
Well, that's true. There's, 10.
How many people are on the internet all day doing social media? Anything that takes away from God, and you're not always aware of it. Mm-hmm. How many people spend tons of time memorizing endless amounts of sports trivia?
Oh, right.
And we don't talk about the demonic aspect of worshiping our sports heroes, do we?
That's true. One other slight tangent, because I was just kind of surprised, because it was so strict. Guéranger seemed to categorically condemn theaters and ball. The balls.
Well, there was a reason for it. Can you guess what they were?
No.
Salacious plays.
I mean, but categorically?
And erotic dances. Well, that's what he was exposed to.
That's not. I mean, is that how balls were? I was picturing something like Jane Austen or something.
Believe you me when I tell you the sorts of balls he was familiar with were the immediate post-revolutionary balls. They were a little, you know.
Oh.
Don't forget, one of the big fashions around the year 1802 when he was growing up was called Cretan Revival.
Oh, what is that?
Bear.
Wow. Gosh, I got a false image in my mind of all the formality and...
Well, there was that side of it. There was that side of it. But like, for instance, remember, human nature doesn't change. It'll always find a venue. So for instance, so many of the eves of our holidays, May Eve, All Hallows Eve, Candlemas Eve, etc. Well, not Candlemas Eve so much, it was so cold, but Midsummer's Eve was sometimes taken as, I mean, there were reasons to go out and build bonfires, right?
Mm-hmm.
People would build bonfires, that's nice. Very often have the priest bless the bonfire. That's great. But there's always a temptation for couples to go off, which you may have noticed even at beaches when we build bonfires today. Sometimes couples sneak off. And bad things can happen.
I see. Okay, well, I guess it's just the impression that in previous historical periods, people were closer to God in general, in that it was a higher bar, I guess, or a higher floor, or something.
In some ways, but in other ways, no. Because human nature doesn't change. I mean, there's no sin you can imagine, with possibly the couple of exceptions. There's no sin you can come up with now that has not been rampant since the beginning. The difference is how society deals with it, whether it accepts it or not, whether it winks at it or really jumps up and down about it. There's been drunkenness in every society, but prohibition has been restricted pretty much to this one.
Okay, I think I get it now. So in a post-revolution society...
everything had gone to pieces.
Yeah.
And what they were seeing, especially what he saw, was some pretty raw stuff.
Wow.
I mean, similarly, too, remember that their standards in some ways were higher than ours. You've got people in novels of that era swooning at the sight of a well-turned ankle. I guarantee you an ankle isn't going to do anything for a
well-turned ankle?
Yeah. But I guarantee you an ankle's not going to do anything for a guy today.
That reminds me of Bill Biersack's novels, where, he's a trad, and, trads have a lot of idiosyncrasies.
You think?
And he was into fulcrum.
Yes.
Or not he, but the main character
was into fulcra.
Fulcra. Now, fulcra is apparently the back of the knee. That's what is being referred to. Am I correct? The back of the knee? Yeah. He was a fulcralosopher?
Yes, well, if you think about it, though, back in the 50s, when Bell and presumably his character first came to light, women's dresses went to about here.
Okay. They can't see that but yeah, okay.
No, well, they're just above the knee.
Yeah.
So the fulcra was as much as you could see.
Ah, I see. Wow. Wow, that's perfect. I wonder if he thought of that.
I doubt it.
Oh, okay.
No, we don't examine ourselves that way. I mean, today we can see anything all the time.
Yeah.
Frankly, I don't know what would drive people wild with desire. Something must, but I don't know what. Puppies, maybe. I don't know.
Puppies?
I don't know, just being nasty. What else we got?
Okay, to finish off today's show, we're going to have 3 questions from Joe.
Okay, Joe. What do you know, Joe?
His first question, what does Mr. Coulombe think of the great English historian, Hilaire Belloc? Is he an essential read for historians? And what are Mr. Coulombe's favorite books by him?
Good question. Well, yes. Belloc I particularly like because, like myself rather, who's Anglo-French. And too French to be a good Englishman, too English to be a good Frenchman. And he met his wife in California. So,
Really?
Yeah. Hiked all the way out here. So,
Wow.
he was an interesting man. Never at home anywhere, really. And as an historian, absolutely essential. One of the things that's funny about him is that he was a very, you could say, a very, not instinctive, but intuitive historian. He worked on a lot of historical intuition, which the work of subsequent people like, what's his name, wrote The Stripping of the Altars, Eamon Duffy, have subsequently proved to be absolutely correct through painstaking research.
Isn't that cutting corners if you're intuitive? Like, how's a historian intuitive?
Well, you get a feeling for periods. You get a feeling for how particular characters will operate. And even if you're not absolutely 100% sure, you can take it and run with it, which is what he did. What's funny is that his intuition, when it came to English history, the French history was terrible. He's not really good with French history at all. But part of that was because he was related to Danton and had a family straw in that fight.
So he's easy on the French.
It was easy on the French revolutionaries.
Okay.
But when it came to the English, where he didn't have a dog in the fight, he was really, really spot on. But precisely because he was so intuitive, he was often attacked at his time as being a sloppy historian. But as I say, the work of people like Eamon Duffy years later has proved that he knew exactly what he was talking about. It's just that he didn't have all of the first-hand sources to hand that they do now.
Interesting.
See, to put this another way, I think you might say he was almost a psychologist of history, more than a historian.
Interesting. Okay. Wow.
Because having immersed himself in a historical character or several, he could pretty well figure out what they were going to do and what they did and why they did it, which is a gift.
Yeah.
As far as my favorite of his books, The Great Heresies, what do you call it, the Characters of the Reformation, but also The Four Men, which is about Sussex, The Road to Rome, which is about hiking to Rome, because he was a great recorder of the human condition, you know. And he certainly had a very charitable, although you wouldn't think so, he had a very charitable disposition toward mankind because he was so aware of his fallen nature. In a way that, it's funny, when the fallen nature of mankind is very much on your mind, it's easy to be charitable. When it's not, and it's easy to demand perfection out of everyone. Save yourself, of course.
Yeah.
Where the more you demand perfection out of other people, the less you seem to demand it out of yourself, and vice versa. The more you demand it out of yourself, the less you seem to demand it out of others, which I guess is what Lent is all about. Haha. What else we got on there?
Okay, for Joe's second question, he says, I'm traditional Catholic and a monarchist who is working his way through a very liberal public university which hates the faith. What recommendations does Mr. Coulombe have for how someone can not only keep the faith, but grow in it while attending an environment hostile to the Catholic faith?
You at Notre Dame or some Jesuit school? No, I didn't mean that. Did I? No.
Yeah, you did.
See what I go through, ladies and gentlemen? This is what I put up with. To say nothing of the commissary lunches late in the week. Anyway, no, here's the thing. Firstly, you need to find like-minded people. Now, my advice to you is check out your Newman Club. What? Well, Newman Clubs vary wildly. Some are very good, some are very bad. The one I went to at Cal State Northridge back in the early 80s was really just a recruiting ground for dignity and the Committee in Solidarity with the People of El Salvador. It's sort of a lefty
It's
thing.
pretty random.
No, queer and lefty. How's that random? In Catholic circles.
Okay, I guess that's not random at all then.
No, it was very, very definite. It was a particular direction they wanted to go in. But they're not all like that. And a lot of them, some of them are very good, some of them are somewhere in between. So see what you've got in terms of your local Catholic community at the university. If there doesn't seem to be anything, then find see if there's a Latin Rite community or an Ordinarian community or a Novus Soto parish that has a lot of devotions somewhat together, or with an Eastern Rite parish, something, in your immediate area. You're in a college town, so there'll be things of historical interest. See if there's anything interesting, historical. Check it out. Use the library. Now, mind you, almost everything is available online now. But I remember when I was at Cal State Northridge, they had a huge library filled with really good Catholic stuff, which of course very few people read. So I read it. Take advantage. And then look around at your faculty. Sure, a lot of them will be Marxists and feminists and all that, committed to maintaining the powers of structure of the university, the structures of power. Mm-hmm. You hear a lot about that from Marxist academics. Those structures of power, yes, and they operate one, which is why your life depends on how they grade you, because they are a structure of power.
No, it's like guns, though. We want to ruin it for everybody else. We want all the guns. We want all the structures of power.
Yeah, pretty
everybody
much.
Else, no.
Pretty much. and by the way, if you're in a class where you don't need the grade, feel free to ask if that phrase comes up. Oh, but professor, isn't this a structure of power? Aren't we dependent on your grade, on how you grade us? How about taking away the power by getting rid of grading, professor? Let's just learn. See how far that flies. But having said all that, you may very well find in some obscure place one or two or more really good professors. So grab out of them. I don't know how you'll find them. Also, look at your student organizations and see if there's any interest there that you can at least partly share. Whether it's fencing or history.
Okay. You talking about libraries remind me of something important. A lot of people that they have money problems, and so they don't read as much as they'd like to. They don't, because they can't buy the books. Well, that public library is right there for you. And so don't give up on reading. Go to that library, rent book. Check out a book. And it's actually a great service if you go to a library and request our book, because then they buy the book.
That's true.
So you're actually generating sales for us, and you're getting to read our books.
And this is another good thing to bear in mind. Same goes to your university library, too. Very often libraries are very beautiful buildings, especially in older areas. And I know, for myself, growing up poor in L.A., other than the churches, the downtown Central Library was just one of the most beautiful buildings I'd ever seen. And exploring it contributed a great deal to my aesthetic sense and so on. So patronize your local library. Ray Bradbury was very much of the belief that all public assistance should be taken away from schools and universities and dumped into libraries instead.
Wow. That's, I don't know if that's pretty extreme.
Well, he liked to make extreme comments in order to get people to think differently
Gosh. Okay.
Well, see, the thing was that Ray, I can call that because I didn't know him, Ray was primarily self-educated through libraries. And, as to a great degree I was myself.
Did you go to college?
No.
Oh, well, that'll do it then. Okay.
I mean, he might have taken one or two night classes or something, but I don't know that he ever completed college.
That makes sense then.
He might have done, but at any rate, everything he really learned, he learned in libraries, he said. So, in fact, when I was younger, I used to bump into him all the time, either at the downtown library at UCLA.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it's an interesting story there. This isn't germane to anything, but the old man gets to reminisce about a great person of the past he met. I really loved Ray Bradbury's work when I was in high school. I still do. As far as I was concerned, until he died, he was our greatest living American writer.
Wow.
In my humble opinion.
That's a statement.
Yeah. So.
What are your favorite works?
Oh, gosh. Martian Chronicles, of course. Something Wicked This Way Comes. And then so many different short stories that are collected in different collections. But the Halloween Tree I very much enjoyed. Fahrenheit 451.
Of course. Of course.
I mean, he was very much a voice of sanity in a world that went mad in the 60s. In addition to everything else, I mean, he made his great claim to fame as a science fiction / fantasy writer. But people don't realize that Dandelion Wine, that's another. People don't realize that he was very much in favor of normality. And one of his great lines, which cracked me up whenever I heard it, which was several times, he would announce to shocked audiences that he was the world's greatest lover. And they would all look at him like, what? But then he would say, well, no, because of all the many things I love. And he would tick them off, books, movies, audience, just go on down the line. Obviously, the more things you love, the greater a lover you are.
Yeah.
And the man loved life, he really did. So at any rate, I was a great fan of his in high school. I was also keeping bees at the time. This enters into the story.
Keeping bees?
Yeah, little buzzy things.
You're a beekeeper?
I was, retired.
Wow, I never knew that. That's awesome.
So, stuff that comes out, I guarantee you all the chicks in human relations know. Anyway, I was reading a book at the time called The ABC and XYZ of Beekeeping.
Okay.
By A.E. and E.I. Root, father and son Root. Anyway, so I wrote him a letter, a fan letter, and he wrote me, I got back this form letter card saying, I get so many letters, I can't really respond to them all, but thank you for your interest. And then he'd written in pen, but if you'd like to see me, come down to Hollywood High, and this is such a date I'm giving a lecture. So I did. And I get down there, and this was the only book I had, right? So at the time I was reading a lot of Kipling. It was another one of my favorites. And so during the questions and answers, I said, Mr. Bradbury, what do you think of Rudyard Kipling? And he said, I'm very glad you asked that question. He said, when I was about your age, I took the bus all the way to New York City to see Lord Dunsany, another fantasy writer, who was giving a talk. And I asked him who was, in his opinion, was the greatest writer in English of our time. And he said, young man, Rudyard Kipling. I see no reason to disagree with that.
Wow.
So afterwards, I went up to him and he said, thanks very much for that question. I really enjoyed it. I said, well, I appreciate that, but sir, I've got nothing of yours to sign. I've just got this book. So he looks at it, it's a big, thick hardcover. He goes, I'll sign it. Opens up and he writes Ray Bradbury on the title page. And then he looks and he goes, we don't need these guys. And he scratches out their names and writes by over his. So I have the only copy of the ABC and XYZ of Beekeeping by Ray Bradbury. But from that time on, I would run into him at the Central Library at UCLA and so on. And then as I got older and other things, finally, I was able to anthologize one of my favorite pieces of his in The Muse in the Bottle. And it was funny because I had gotten a letter from, I don't want to say who it was, but it was the grandson of James Joyce, is a writer I do not like. I didn't want to approach him, but the publisher insisted. And the guy wants £1,000 sterling
Gosh.
for the piece I had mine. And he wrote me a letter saying, I don't think that's too much to ask for the work of the greatest writer of the 20th century. I wrote back and said, you're absolutely right. Too bad it wasn't your grandfather. But I couldn't help myself. But you know how much Ray Bradbury's agent asked me for? Because she said, I'll get back to you.
How much?
$5.
$5?
Yeah.
Why $5?
Well, I was jaw dropped. I mean, the greatest living
Yeah.
American writer, only $5, really?
Yeah.
So I called him back and he said, well, to tell you the truth, it's because, number one, I really like the piece you chose. It's one of my favorites, too. And secondly, it's an honor to have my work appear with some of the writers in that anthology,
Wow.
living and dead. Now, this was a man who was, as I say, the greatest living writer in the United States at that time, my way of thinking. And a humbler man you couldn't have imagined. Because he really loved literature, he loved life. And when you do that, the focus is off you and on it.
Mm.
So we've come a long way from the question of libraries, but I think Ray would very much approve his being invoked in their favor. So that's my answer.
Okay. Our final question today. As a Catholic, I grew up being taught the Bible was divinely inspired. How then do I explain to those who wish to discredit it by saying there are errors made by the authors of the New Testament? Example of one of these errors is the year Jesus was born. He could not have been born in the time of Herod, as one gospel states, and during the census of Quirinius, as another gospel states. How do I explain these discrepancies while maintaining it is a divinely inspired document?
Well, firstly, who says he couldn't have been born then? The burden of proof is on the accuser. And I'd like to know where they're getting their stuff from, number one. I mean, what are these unimpeachable sources that are yapping away? You got to remember something. The writers of the gospel lived a lot closer to the events than anybody writing in a university now. It's true. It's true. It's also true that there are certain discrepancies, not those, that have been remarked upon by no less than the fathers of the church.
That just reminds me. Once it just clicked something in my head. Pope Benedict actually refutes that in Jesus of Nazareth. He refutes that specifically. He says, yeah, there's. I thought this was a waste of time. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Well, apparently it is a thing.
Yeah.
Read Jesus of Nazareth for that specific point. But the truth of the matter is that they lived a lot closer to the events they were describing than we do.
Yeah.
I'd love to think, and bear in mind that very often people, for party purposes, I know this is a shock, will distort things. I wonder in 1,000 years what historians will make of contemporary coverage of Donald Trump. He was the most wonderful man who ever lived and the evilest person that ever killed an infant. Oh no, I'm sorry, he wasn't killing the infants. My mistake, his opponents. Anyway, you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, they're not living, they don't understand the way we would.
No,
they're disconnected.
They couldn't possibly, because they're living 1,000 years from now.
Yeah.
We one day will be the object of scrutiny by our descendants. And if they can keep their lunch down after finding out what we were like, more power to them. But, what? Anyway, like there's something wrong with being disgusting as a people, as a race, as a culture.
I didn't say anything.
See, this is what I'm dealing with. Anyway, the thing you got to bear in mind too is that in any case, the scriptures derive their authority from the church, not vice versa. The church existed before the Bible was written. Tradition and scripture are the two ends of Revelation, but it's tradition that dictated the books of the Bible.
Interesting.
Dictated which were going to be in the canon. So, I would say that when people come up with these discrepancies, number one, prove it. Number two, what discrepancies there are in the Bible, and there are some, according to the church fathers anyway, it doesn't really matter that much because it's the Bible is the servant of the church, not vice versa. You gotta remember that biblical inspiration does not mean that everything was dictated to by the Holy Ghost in the same manner that the secretarial poll here in this building dictate your brother's letters.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's different.
Yeah. So, bear all that in mind, and also bear another one, and that is that people who don't want to be convinced will always have objections. And the way you can find that out after a while is that the objections start to cancel each other out.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like the church because they've got all this money. And then you explain that. Well, I don't like the church because of all the poor people. And so
I know.
I don't like the church because it's so strict on morals. I don't like the church because of a Mardi Gras.
Well, my big pet peeve is I don't like the church because of all the priest scandals.
Yeah.
How could that, all the corruption, and I borrowed your argument. It's like, oh, so why do you like democracy? Why do you like politicians? Because they're so clean?
Yeah. Well, that was, that's why when I found out President Nixon was a crook, I joined the KGB.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's.
But see, they're going to get with it. When you get to that point, there's no arguing. They just don't want the church. They just don't want it. And all you can say is have a nice afterlife.
I know, it's frustrating. I thought, there are just so many layers that, to peel away. Just one ounce of faith, and then it would all just...
1 ounce of goodwill.
1 ounce of goodwill.
But, people are what they are. And the thing to bear in mind is that human beings, thanks to the fall, are born with what you might call a spiritual suicidal impulse. On some level, all of us want to go to hell. I know what that sounds like. We don't really want to go to hell. We want us to do our own will, which is the equivalent of going to hell. That's true of all of us most of the time, most of us all the time. And it's not God's doing, it's ours.
You don't dare to hope all men be saved?
No.
By the great theologian?
No, I don't. I hope I'll be saved.
Oh, that's uncharitable. You don't care about other people?
I care deeply, but I care most about me. No, I mean, if someone were to say, oh, I wouldn't mind going to hell if I could save the rest of mankind, I would. What, are you nuts?
Wow, I think that's a profound lack of understanding of what hell is.
Yeah, I think so. It's not just living in Hackensack.
Okay.
Hackensack, New Jersey.
Not familiar, but I'm sure it's a dump.
No, it's not that bad. There's worse in New Jersey. God knows that's true. What? Oh, like downtown Newark, some kind of paradise.
I hope you don't have any people from Jersey watching this right now.
I'm sure we do. And you know who you are, too. You know what I'm talking about. Jersey City, those garden spots. Do you think that when they gave New Jersey the name the Garden State, they were snickering?
What's your favorite place in New Jersey?
My community favorite, Perth Amboy.
Why?
Historic.
Okay. Well, at least there's one good place in Jersey.
Well, there's a lot of good places. don't take my account. Okay. Jersey actually has an awful lot to say for it. But you didn't hear that from me because I was born in Manhattan.
Oh, okay.
So I have to regard everything beyond the Hudson as looking evil. It's a New York thing. But no, I remember the second cast of Saturday Night Live. They were always making fun of Jersey. Actually, so was the first one. But Joe Piscopo had this mock documentary, from New Jersey, the Garden State. and you see him playing with what's supposed to be hazardous waste from the Union Carbide plant.
Oh my goodness.
Shrieking at the top of his lungs, come to New Jersey, the Garden State. You can go to the Willits Organ store at the Paramus Mall.
Wow.
You got roots in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Or Queens, rather.
Yeah.
Flushing.
New York, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know. What is the sound of one head flushing? Never mind.
Okay.
It's a New York joke. Anyway.
Are we done?
I guess so. All right. Well, we made it through another week, as did the fish special in the commissary. I guess next week we'll do it to it.
Yeah.
We're let's say this is the third week in Lent.
Yes.
So next week's the fourth week,
Yes.
which means is it this Sunday military, rose, vestments, and all that?
I don't know. You're the.
I'm the liturgical expert. I think so. Well, we'll see. The next week is the fourth, and Passion Week's coming up, Holy Week, and finally April Fools.
Yes, everyone's excited for that.
Well, all right, ladies and gentlemen, God bless you all, and remember, if it's a library, it's worth your time and money.
See you next time.